What if I told you to please someone you find repugnant?
Why?
Because that is exactly what Venerable Teresita Quevedo said in her sixth point in the Code of Amiability, to please those toward whom one feels repugnance.
So this is number 6. It feels like they're getting harder.
They are, it seems. The previous two were to basically do a favor, or to, if someone asks you to do a favor, or if your spouse asks you to. We're looking specifically at our spouse here, how to follow this code of amiability through our spouse or with our spouse. And the previous two were to, when asked to do a favor,
Positively?
to reply positively. Yeah. And the next one, the one before this one, was to help the unfortunate. And now the number 6 is to please your husband, to please your wife, if you feel repugnance towards them for whatever reason. It's not just to put up with them, it's to actually go out of your way to please them. And that is very difficult. Normally,
Yeah,
what do we do?
normally we'd withdraw, like just get away from them, avoid them, so don't go near them after that.
Yeah.
Criticize, reject them. Yeah.
Right. If you feel repugnance towards someone, well, what does that exactly mean?
It's kind of like disgust, except disgust is for like, rotten food or bad smells or something like that, bad taste and smells. Whereas repugnance is kind of like disgust, but it's for more things that are like sort of ethically or morally repulsive to you. So what would be some examples?
Maybe cruelty, if your spouse is cruel somehow.
Right. Mistreating children.
Injustice, like
extortion.
If it's, I think in marriage it's easy to feel like there's some injustice sometimes when you feel like you're being treated unfairly.
Right. Dishonesty.
That's a big one in marriage. Sometimes people aren't completely honest.
Corruption, abuse of power.
Neglect. These are all examples of why a person might feel repugnance. What does it mean to please someone? Because that's what this rule is asking for you to do, is to please someone toward whom you feel repugnance.
You provide them with happiness or enjoyment, or satisfy their tastes or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So examples would be
to give compliments, maybe, or to serve them with love.
Okay. Acts of kindness.
Yeah.
To encourage them.
Okay.
Be respectful.
Yeah. Yeah, those are difficult, I think, to do if you feel repugnance towards someone. One good reason to follow this rule of Venerable Teresita is because God calls us to love in marriage. And even if you feel repugnance, which hopefully you don't, but if you do feel repugnance at all, for whatever reason, because sometimes I think that in marriage, this person who you're supposed to love the most, there might be something that they do wrong. And because of that, your feelings towards them might be worse than your feelings towards anyone else, right?
Yeah, or, it's easy to get, the whole hate the sin, love the sinner thing, right? So it's easy to feel repugnance for certain actions that really are repugnant, and then let that kind of bleed over into how you feel about the person who's doing them.
So how can we possibly do this? Because it is a really difficult thing to do. If you feel repugnant towards someone, then you want to avoid them usually. But obviously, God calls us to love our spouse in a very special way because we are one. And I think the way that we can do this is to ask God for the grace to love. We're always talking about that sacramental grace, the sacramental graces that God gives us in marriage. And this is a special one, I think, when you are asking God, help me to love my spouse more. There's no way that he can refuse that. We're asking for something so good and something that's good for us.
Yeah, he already wants that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And further, rather than just asking him to love your spouse, you can ask him to help you to not feel repugnance towards your spouse if you are feeling that repugnance. Some people, like I said, have that temptation. I remember once when I was at a party and there was a woman there who had been married for over 10 years. And she was telling me, I had only been married for about 2 years, I think. And she had been telling us how she felt a great disgust for her husband, who I guess her husband's smell. and and I felt so sad for her because I thought, oh my goodness, I love the way my husband smells, you know. Of course, I had only been married for 2 years, but I remember thinking, Lord, I never want to feel that way towards my husband. Please help me to love his smell all the time. So I encouraged myself to love that about him because I didn't ever want to feel that way towards him where I felt any kind of disgust or repugnance. And God has answered my prayers abundantly because I just, I love it. But, it's true. There have been in times in our relationship when I've felt strong, bad feelings for whatever reason. And, I see those as temptations. And in fighting them, I always turn to God to help, for grace to basically do what I can't do without God's help. And he's never let me down. So, yeah.
So this time, instead of inviting you to do something, let's take it up a notch and challenge you, because this isn't easy, to next time you're starting to have feelings of repugnance, do something to please your spouse. And we'll see you next time.